Hey, it's Zim, and as you might be aware, the Steam Summer Sale is on. Normally one of the best times to pick up PC games at very good prices. Now, I'm going to take this time to highlight some of my favorite games throughout the sale. I'm actually going to do a couple extra videos than normal, and today we're looking at 40KGladius. Now, this game normally is at $40. However, you can pick it up for $9.59 for the base game. Now, this game also has a ton of expansions, so you can get a complete edition. Normally, that's $140, I believe. Currently at $56.36. Now, of course, it's US dollars, so some of that pricing may be adjusted based on your region. Now, 40KGladius is what I like to consider a spiritual successor to the Dawn of War series. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Dawn of War, it's a 40K RTS game. Very good for the first game and even the second game, while the third game is not so great. Now, with 40KGladius, they've redesigned that essentially, except for instead of an RTS, we're looking at a turn-based strategy game. It's technically classified as a 4X, but I would be very hesitant to call that because a lot of 4Xs tend to have diplomacy and things like this. This is much more fast-paced. It's all about the combat and action. The research trees are much more condensed and focused. It very much feels like a turn-based Dawn of War. Now, going in, there are multiple factions, as you'd expect. With the base game, you're just going to get Astra Militarum, Necrons, Orcs, and Space Marines. The rest of the ones you see here, Chaos Marines, Necrons, Tau, and Tyranids, and the Aldari are all DLC. They're paid for expansions. If you got the complete edition, you would get all of those included. But just so you know, if you're just buying the $10 base game, which is normally $40, be the Astra Militarum, the Necrons, the Orcs, and the Space Marines. Now, that's still a great mix. They all have very unique feels to them across all the factions, which is great. But it's just something to keep in mind. Now, normally these factions are a little bit pricier than what I'd say is normal for like DLC. They're about $15 normally, although you can pick these up all separately right now for about $10 each. And as you can see, it's going to break down the abilities of each of these factions over here in their description box. Now, I love this game. I've heard it's pretty decent for multiplayer. I actually only play this game solo against hard AIs and different maps. That's obviously going to be up to you on how you want to play, but I do hear very good things about the multiplayer. And one of my favorite factions is the Chaos Space Marines. As you can see here, we can change the difficulty, add more AIs, we can change specific AI difficulty, and there's also size of the world, world difficulty, and landmass and how that's broken down. So the worlds are always randomly created, and then your factions are going to be spread across. Now you can do teams. So as you can see, we're at Team A, and then these guys are no team, but if we wanted to change that, we could as well. There's a difficulty for each of the AIs. I think the AI is pretty decent. I'm not someone who tends to push the AI. I've seen some weird things happen with the harder AI than I have with the average or strong AI. So it's just something to keep in mind. Sometimes the AI can get weird based on how difficult the world is, because there are neutral units in the world, and so like sometimes based on factions, those factions can get deleted by these hard early world mobs, and they can act weirdly towards these world mobs. So just keep that in mind. Probably my biggest complaint with the game. But we're going to go ahead and show you kind of what the game starts off like. And here we go.
10,000 years we have fought. At Luna, at Terra, at Cadia. Beside the false end.
All of these factions also have these intro cinematics. They're pretty decent, but they're very minimal. And especially with the core game factions, they all kind of use the same art assets. You only start getting different art assets for these intros for these unique factions like that come as DLC.
Now, Cadia has fallen. The dark gods have guided us to this Imperial Hive world.
Alrighty, and we are into the game. So as we can see here, we are limited view based on what we have going on. Plus, in this case, we also have an AI who we get vision on as well. In this case, they're the Necrons, and we are the Space Marines. They're different interactables on the world, but just like with any RTS or 4X, you're going to want to start with a base. Now, these guys are very unique in that their base kind of Chaos Cultists get to start their city, and there's pros and cons to making cities. You'll also be able to start to spread out your city more and more, and harvest the resources. So as you can see, hovering over here, all those zones will offer me bonus to mineral, but less food. Now, all of these require different things, so some living units like the Chaos Cultists obviously need food to produce and survive. But if you're growing more of a tanks build, more mechanical units, you're going to want higher mineral production. However, you normally want balanced stuff. You also notice these two tiles are flashing. That's kind of the AI telling you, hey, this is a good area to build a city, probably. Now, sometimes I often disagree with it, but it's trying to give you the best based on what you can view. View is also extended by moving your units, and there's always a fog of war, so if we move past these areas, eventually it'll get clouded over, and we won't have the current information that is currently there. We can also see that there's a gate over here for the Eldari, so that's something we might want to worry about. But we're going to go ahead and build a city here. And yeah, why not? We'll just build it here. So as you can see, we get our city. Everyone's faction has unique art assets. As we can see, we also have some neutrals on our board here. And there's plenty to discover and build with. There's also very interesting different varieties of builds for factions, although how viable they are on the multiplayer side of things, it's a lot harder to tell. I'm sure that there are definitely some rush-based strategies that shut out a lot of things. But as you can see, we have a base, and we can start building things here now. We want to expand this city, so we might want to acquire tile. And we get to choose whichever one's adjacent to us. And in this case, we might want something that provides decent mineral food. But you also notice that white kind of shape at the top. It says 3. That means that they can hold 3 buildings once we acquire that tile. It's the same with the tile we're currently sitting on. Although once you build your city there, it already took up 2 tiles. So we're going to go ahead and build that. And as I said, this is turn-based. This is preferable to RTS for me anyway, just because that way it's not about who can react faster. So it's easier to be able to take your time and figure out exactly what you want to do. Now, of course, you are timed in multiplayer matches, but that's a different story entirely. So we're going to go ahead and capture these points. When you capture points like this, they will give you their resource for your city. So we'll do that. And I'll show you the research tree as well. The research tree is here. It tells you how long it's going to take. And as we can see, we can go further up the tiers. Now, I will say that these later tiers, you tend to either have already pretty much won the game or have won the game before you're hitting tier 8 or so. Now, that doesn't mean you can't rush technology, but it is something to keep in mind that this game is definitely faster paced, and why I consider a spiritual successor to the Dawn of War series. However, we're going to choose one of these, and we'll do Chaos Spawn. And since it's all we have, we'll end our turn, and our allies will do some stuff. And so will the enemies, including our world neutrals. So as you can see, the neutral that was up here is now gone off into the fog of war and the world we have yet to explore. Now, I will say that there's a problem with the... if you have AIs or teammates on your alliance, essentially, sometimes it will move the camera to have you watch their stuff. Meanwhile, you have more important stuff that you're worried about happening around you that you're not seeing because the camera's for some reason taking focus on your ally. So it's slightly frustrating, but not too bad. As you can see, we can have our main command center attack, and we can also move units to attack. And once again, that's all turn-based. Now, enemies will retaliate if they have ranged weapons, and obviously melee units can only retaliate if they're in melee range. Now, ranged units tend to get a benefit for staying at a distance. However, that also means that when someone does close in, they're doing less damage. Of course, it also depends on the weapon. So, like, these bolters actually do better damage the closer they are. And we'll end our turn there. So once again, we'll see our Necrons going through and dealing some stuff. And so this is also where AIs, like I said, get weird with the neutrals in this world. And enslavers are definitely one of those ones that you have to worry about. Like, there are some really big and powerful neutrals early on that you can discover. And as a player, you have the knowledge of it's not worth the resources to stand and fight. I've seen AIs just send wave after wave and die to them, and just keep draining resources until they get destroyed by it. And it's kind of annoying. So just note that while for the most part the AI is really good, it does have some flaws. We'll move up here. And obviously, we don't know who our enemy AIs are, so we want to shut down these Eldari gates at first, because we don't want the Eldari just showing up out of nowhere. So all units also have their unique attack actions. I believe the Chaos Space Marines and the Space Marines actually share a similar one, and there are certain units that do share similar ones. But otherwise, everything is fairly unique to each faction. And like I said, each faction also brings a very asymmetrical style of how they're going to play. As we can see, though, we've acquired a new tile. So our walls have expanded. And it's nice because you get to actually see these cities grow and change as you build more buildings. And let's see here. Probably going to want to start producing something. And as you can see, our food is okay, but could be better. So we might want to focus food here because that is our best place. Now, I will say that with this game, as much as I love it, sometimes the randomization is far more generous to certain players than others, so don't expect equal starts. Half the time you will find yourself either in a far better position than others or in a far worse one. But as you can see, this is the game, and your entire goal of this game isn't to make peace. It is to destroy your enemies and be the last man standing. And as you can see, I was worried that they were going to go after these enslavers. They're going to lose the unit to them. That's unfortunate. So it's definitely a game. If you really enjoy Dawn of War before, if you're into the Warhammer 40K and enjoy maybe a slower pace but still action heavy and very fast game compared to most 4Xs, this is definitely a game worth checking out. There's a ton of fun to be had. There's very unique and interesting things you can do. There's a ton of variety with a ton of factions. They continue to expand it. They actually just released a new expansion, adding a new unit to a lot of factions, and as well as some other things. So definitely worth checking out if you are a big fan of the 40K universe. All right, guys, that's it for me, though. This is 40KGladius. In the comments below, let me know if you've checked it out, if there's another game you think should be highlighted on the Steam summer sale videos that I'm going to be doing. Ideally, I want to just show off games that maybe have gone overlooked or are not as big named as the ones you'd expect to see, like Bethesda games or Sekiro or any of the big names that everyone's always kind of looking out for. Thanks for watching, though. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't, and I'll talk to you guys later.